All right, basketball fans, game one of the WNBA Finals has come and gone, and the Las Vegas Aces are up 1-0 on the New York Liberty after a 99-82 win at Michelob Ultra Arena. I mean, they was doing whack-a-ellie, and they certainly whacked the Liberty defense. So let's talk about it on Gotta Get Up. Y'all know how to get these jokes in.
That was wild.
Right. I mean, but is it a lie? Is it a lie?
No.
Questionable. We'll talk about it. Here goes the intro.
Gotta get up. Gotta get up. Gotta get up.
Hey, women's basketball fans. Welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans brought to you by Black Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. All right. Listen, fam, we're going to come with these jokes. We're going to get these jokes out of the way. But this is still a podcast for New York Liberty fans. And if you're really from New York, then you know how we do. Sometimes you got to give that tough love. We still love, but it's going to be tough because we tough. All right, listen. Whack-a-ellie. That defense was kind of whack. Bloop. Got the Vegas Aces brought the hammer in the second half. But there was a whole first half of the game. The New York Liberty actually had a halftime lead, 3-point lead, and it was a back and forth game. Misha, let's first get your thoughts. And I don't know if you're going to make it about the Washington Mystics or not, but you're the most neutral party on here.
Listen, I can't find a way to make this about the Mystics, unfortunately. But yeah, like you said, that first half was very evenly matched. I was thoroughly entertained heading into halftime. Was not expecting the kind of momentum drop off that I saw in the second half. And that's just what it felt like. You know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily I just don't know. The Liberty just didn't feel like they had that same kind of gusto coming into the second half. Of course, obviously, first half, you get a big half from Marine Johannes.
Can't hit, long rebound. Stewart will flag it down. Up ahead, Johannes fires away and hits from three. There you go.
That's where she made her biggest impact in the Commissioner's Cup day, and she said that she had been watching film of the matchups in the regular season where she was so productive, and she said, I am fast, I can push pace, and you see here, she can be deadly from three in transition.
Becky Hammond was very much on guard for Johannes as well, saying she really was the secures the rebound. Here's Johannes, gets some space, and hits again. Maureen Johannes with more points in this first.
The lean to the left in transition, barely needs any space. Wow, what a difference maker she has.
A two-time MVP, a champion in this league. Both her and Stewart, each with multiple MVPs. Neither of them is 30 yet. Jonquel Jones muscling her way inside.
Come on, MJ really did her thing. She was shooting those one-legged threes that folks who haven't been paying attention, they didn't know that she had that in her bag. But folks who've been paying attention to MJ for some time now know that that's a layup. You know what I mean? That's a layup, and it's terribly hard to guard. And she had a great half, and that was a big boost. But I think there was a active searching for what that next spark was going to be in the second half for the Liberty. And it felt like they needed that to stay on pace. We talk about pace all the time when we're talking about the Aces, to stay on pace with the Aces, who were just extremely efficient, frankly. I mean, they're four of their starting five, the Jack crew, as Monica McNutt calls them. They were all, outside of Asia Wilson missing it by literally a point, all of them had 20 points. 20 points inefficiently. Young was 9 for 15. Gray was 6 for 13. Plum was 10 for 19. And Asia was 7 for 11. That's just efficient basketball. That's hard to stop. Whether you're getting that from your starters or from three of your starters and one of your bench players, that's hard to stop, especially when you do have that kind of momentum decline for the Liberty in the second half. And they just couldn't figure out where to get those points. And that results in a 17-point deficit. And, of course, a lot of people ragged on her, but I just think it was a tough matchup being cross-matched with Jackie Young. But Sabrina just didn't have a good night. And they got to figure out what they're going to do when that happens.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked about efficiency. I want to get to that when it comes to Breanna Stewart, because I think we have to have a conversation on a fluid 20-plus points and I had to work my ass off 20 plus points. So I want to get to that. But Brian, I want to come to you and actually ask you about the aces, because Becky Hammon after the game said that she asked the team to grade their first half performance, and she said the team graded themselves with a D. That was even worse than what she graded them. But a lot of that had to do with their defense. And as Misha said, we just heard them talk about Maureen Johannes, and I'm going to put the clip in here for those who didn't watch. But like Kelsey Plum tried to guard one of them things on the switch and almost threw a fit. Like she had a temper tantrum on the court when that thing went in. I just thought that was hilarious because they were mad. They were big mad, but they made adjustments. What can you say about the tale of two halves when it comes to the Vegas defense and what they took away from the Liberty?
Yeah, one thing that Sandy clocked in postgame on her side was that they trapped Maureen a lot more when she had the ball in her hands after halftime. And they were really able to sort of like make sure she was able to sort of spring to the corner, really sort of get those angles to go downhill or just rise up from three. So getting the ball out of her hands in that way was really valuable. And I think that just always being able to defend Breanna Stewart in a crowd is so valuable for that group. And I think especially when they're able to do that, it makes things difficult. And we're probably going to get to it a little bit later, but for a great scoring team, you're not going to take away everything. It's impossible. So you have to figure out, okay, what am I going to live with? I can live with only one. If I live with one thing, I'm okay with it. And Vegas made the deliberate choice to be okay with Courtney Vander's shooting. Like, we'll go way under. Salute. If you want to take that jumper, fantastic. You're not, as long as it's not Sabrina, you're not shooting from 35, cool. If it's not JJ botting me on the inside, I can live with it. Salute. You got to make these jumpers. You got to do this tonight. If you make them, great. I'll see you Wednesday. But if not, we got this one locked in. And throughout much of the second half, and when I was watching on the commentary, Rebecca Lobo was making the point consistently that Sloot wasn't looking at the basket. Like she was just like almost just like trying to set people up as much as she could. But Plum was going way under on the screens, and Sloot is a really good finisher at the basket. But if someone's going way under and you're trying to go up, they're right there for you. And Asia Wilson is lurking in the background, and she had one of her highlight blocks on Sloot when she did get one of those few lanes. Asia was right there to snap it out immediately. So I think for New York, it's a situation where they've got to figure out how to for Sloot to sort of figure out how to strike that proper balance. And I would say, even though the game got out of hand late, I did like on Sloot's side that she did start taking those shots late in the fourth, because I think, once I felt like when I was watching, I sort of thought the game was over when Sabrina had that bad inbounds pass that I think Plum stole for a layup. I was like, okay, this is over. Like, all right. I'm like, all right, man, just start. Use the rest of the night to sort of like build up a little memory bank for game 2.
Oh, in the damn towel, like.
I'm like, hey, man, just wrap it up. We'll start getting ready for Wednesday night. And I did like that she was able to start taking those jumpers, because I think she's gonna be on the court a lot, because we have really 3 great ball handlers, and 2 of them are gonna be on the court pretty much at least one on the court all the time. So you're gonna need to be able to take those shots, and you have to keep that confidence, which I think Sandy highlighted that Sloot did, even though the game got out of hand. So I think for her, it's just a situation of, if it's open and I'm in rhythm, I gotta take it, because if I'm able to make them, they can't, like, my defender won't be able to come cheat and help on JJ when she's about to do something great in the post. They can't sort of leave to go bother Breanna Stewart. I've got to make sure that I keep my defender with me so they have more room to do what they do, and then that opens everything else up for the rest of the group.
It's great that you said that, because after the press conference media availability, we were also able to chat with Courtney Vandersloot and Maureen Johannes. And Maureen talked about just what you said, Brian, trapping. She got trapped. Then you heard Courtney Vandersloot talk a little bit about what she needs to do specifically, but also how the backcourt can make sure that everyone's getting more engaged. These clips that I'm about to show you actually have already been sent over to everyone that's a part of our Patreon posse here at Black Rosie Media. So we're going to give you extra coverage coming through in the WNBA Finals on Gotta Get Up Overtime. But here's Marine Johannes quickly and Courtney Vandersloot. All right, Marine, can you walk us through kind of what you were seeing in the first half that opened up your scoring?
I think I just try to coming on court, just playing with confidence. It's kind of a new season. It's a final, so.
What do you think you did well in the first half?
I think I did some mistakes, but I tried my best to keep going. I had some tough shots, but it went in. So it's kind of sometimes it will happen. You got a little bit of luck. But I'm just trying to help the team. I'm trying to stay focused, play with confidence, play really hard. They were tough with us, and I think our movement was not the best that we did. They had a really good game. We have to admit it, but it's not the end of the. It's not the end of the world. It's a series, so we just have to continue to stay together, stay connected, and that's it.
You were in that position most of the first game in Connecticut, wasn't close. Does that help you guys? Hey, we were in the spot last round. And we got to bounce back.
Yeah, I think so. This is a series for a reason, and we didn't do what we needed to do to take care of business today, but. We learned a lot. I think we now we have a good point of reference going forward. We're going to learn from it. We have to make adjustments, and we've been in this position before, and we weren't going to sweep them. We knew that, so it's going to be a battle, and it's all about adjustments.
Did you find anything that stood out to you from the first half and the second half of this game regarding pace, regarding defense? I'm just curious.
I think we made some mistakes defensively. To start the second half, and then we kind of try to make up for it, took some bad shots, and they capitalized on it, and then we were kind of on our heels the rest of the time. I don't think we ever kind of made that back, made it up. At the end of the game, I said it was a matter of, 5 or 6 minutes. I'll have to go watch it, but it felt about 5 or 6 minutes that we kind of let things get away, and then that was it. The rest of the game, we played pretty well, and we did the right things, so I think there's a lot that we can take from this game, but the biggest thing is we have to put 40 minutes together. If it's a few minutes of bad basketball or you're not playing yourselves, the other team is going to capitalize, and I think we've seen that work over time.
Misha, I want to come to you after hearing what Sluty said, because she talked about, the question was about the backcourt and how can the backcourt better engage and make sure that, and depending how you look at Betnijah Laney, sometimes she's a part of the backcourt, sometimes she's not, I guess, whatever. But specifically being asked about how to get Sloot more involved, how to get JJ more involved, and how to get Stewie more involved. And we also heard the Vegas Aces and their backcourt talk about that as well. Even today, Brian, I know you know that it was Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum, and they said we run through Asia. They said we run through A. It was Jackie who said that. They run through Asia. So how important and what is the balance of a backcourt being able to feed their post players, but then also when they're given opportunity, like Brian was saying with Vandersloot, to make sure that they make teams pay for giving them a shot as well?
It's a fine line. It's a hard line to walk. But I think the easiest way to go about this and kind of putting a coaching hat on is you've got a team full of players who have a lot of skills. And if you let it, it can make it a lot harder for you to decide what direction you need to move in. Frankly, you got to decide what your priority is going to be. And for me, when you have Breanna Stewart on your team, she has to be your priority. This is the finals. This is for all the marbles. This is for the big bucks. And who has been in this situation before? Breanna Stewart. And so for me, offensively, you've got to find a way to do everything through Stewie. You have to make her a priority. You have to help her get open and understand that because she is a world-class player, when there are mismatches or when there are reads to be made, she'll be able to make them. You know what I mean? She's got that IQ. It's not like she's one-dimensional in that way. She sees the floor extremely well, and she can pass the ball when she needs to pass the ball. And then when you have somebody who knows that they're the priority, everybody else feels more organized. You're not wondering where this bucket's going to come from on this possession, because okay, it's kind of like in football. You go through your, you know what I mean? Your options, you go through your progression. You decide, okay, if Stu doesn't have this, we've got a back cut here. We've got a handoff for Sabrina here, that kind of stuff. And once you decide that's Stewie's priority, the rest of it kind of falls into place, in my opinion. It makes it easier for Sloot and Sabrina to find their spots, because they'll be wide open when they double Stewie in the post, or when they, bring somebody over to help. You got to find them open, and you got to find those spaces.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because, and we were talking about this before we started recording, but I was traveling yesterday, so I was able to tap into WNBA Twitter Spaces, Monica McNutt, Ari Chambers, and who else? Oh, Lo was on there. And there was something, I believe it was Monica, who was talking about how it looked at times like the Liberty were out here playing like, I'm gonna go get mines, like I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah.
And again, that quote that Jackie had today just stood out to me so much. We always play through A being A'ja Wilson. And Brian, you and I have talked about this on this here show. A'ja Wilson, keys were given to A'ja on arrival. Okay? I have a lot of things to say about Bill Lambier. I do. I do. I have thoughts, and they are complex. And, when we have the off season, we might have a 5-part series, because that's how I feel. But there are things. But one thing you can say about Bill Lambier is he knows how to construct a team. Now, the laissez-faire coaching execution, again, 5-part series coming soon on Black Rosie Media. Got to get up.
Stay tuned.
But right, stay tuned. When you do that as a head coach / GM, there has been no doubt since. Coaches have changed, personnel has changed, players have changed. A'ja being her has not changed. Now, when you compare that to what we've been talking about with the New York Liberty, and Jonquel Jones has said this, all of the players have said this, Sandy Brondello has said this, they're having to, if the Aces are like a beautiful artisan sourdough, like the Liberty are, like sponge cake in a microwave. Listen, they didn't have time. There was no levying of there was no.
What is this Great British Baking Show?
Whoa.
I do watch baking shows. Thank you very much. And listen, I used to hate on things microwaved, because that's not how they should be. But sometimes you need a hack. Sometimes you need to get where you got to go. And that microwave gonna save you. And that microwave gonna save you. Mm-hmm. And you know what? A good cook can make that microwave bread taste like something. And I think Sandy Brondello is a good cook. But sometimes you could just tell when things have been microwaved and when they've been let to sit and simmer. And that's the difference between these teams. So when it comes to, I want to ask this of you, Brian. Do you feel that the New York Liberty have a good stronghold on who their go-to is? And is it based on scenario, or is it what Misha was saying, that at this point in time, Breanna Stewart already has titles and MVP and finals MVPs? Where do you think the Liberty are when it comes to that part of their microwave process?
I would say that when they're operating on all cylinders, it's a very egalitarian offense. Like the ball's moving around from spot to spot, and it's always going to wind up with a great shot. No matter, like, there's always going to be a great shot for someone if everything hits the way it's supposed to. And I think that, like you guys are mentioning, and I think what the team mentioned as well too, that after halftime, it sort of got to that, oh wow, we're down. I got to put us out right now. And then it turns to less movement and less sort of like great passing in that way. Because typically, I wish I'd said this at the end of the last pod, like for like a number to watch. If they have above like 20 assists, that's when you know they're doing something right, where everything is moving around well, everything is moving well. But I think they only had like 17, some low, like 14, some really low number. And after half, it was a situation where they're having to really try to sort of scramble to figure stuff out. And I think that in moments like that, you just gotta sort of stay with it. And I think that sometimes when things sort of start to go haywire for the group, it's when they just sort of like rush their stuff a little bit, and it's not as patient and free flowing as it needs to be. So I think that's something that they always try to sort of get right, and they usually do on the like when they get a second bite at the apple, just making sure that they keep that movement, keep figuring things out in that way. And I think that ultimately, if the game is close late and the movement isn't there and it's time to get a bucket, I think that's when it's full Brianna time. And I think everybody on the team knows to do that, because we've seen even the Connecticut game was her and JJ down the stretch really bringing it home in that way. But we've seen games throughout the year where it's just, oh, hey, Stewie, do stuff. She does it. Like that, like the last game in Dallas was a masterclass in Brianna. Go cook, and then she cooks. So I think that when the time comes, that will really sort of play a role. And I think that throughout the game, you just want to make sure that everyone's fed. You make sure you really sort of take those advantages that are there when it comes. But when when the time is really there and Stewie has it going, I think everyone on the team has that natural idea to be like, okay, there's our number one. Get on her shoulders. She'll bring us to the finish line.
And I guess I'm still, as we're talking about this, because I've never really thought about it, not explicitly, I'm realizing as we're having this conversation, but this is another clear-cut difference. I mean, I was joking about the, easy bake microwave situation, but we know that time is something that Vegas has had, the Liberty has not. Right. And does that factor, or lack thereof in Sandy Brondello's case, does that make for having to go to, or maybe she's choosing to go to, as you said, more of like a democratic, we're all in this together, we're better together, like that's how they play when they're at their best. And it reminds me, I'm like going to geek out a little bit because I love studying leadership development, but there's this model called Tuckman's model, and it's all about how you bring a team together, a work team, a family, a whatever, a group of people coming together for the first time. When they come together, it's called the forming stage, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we're a team. Look at our matching uniforms. We got new sneakers. Everything's amazing. Yeah. So everyone's super excited, right? And then you get to the storming stage, and it's very natural for people to, like Monica was saying on Spaces, like, oh, I got to get mine. And it's like, well, I got to get mine. And it's like, well, you said you was going to get yours, so I ain't got to do nothing because you going to do it. So I'm going to chill here. And it's like, well, why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And sometimes there's people asking questions and not doing anything. You know what I'm saying? So that's very natural as well, because you're trying, it's like a dance. It's like a double dutch in and out. You're trying to, make sure you jump at the right time. So that's the storming stage. And then the forming stage comes right after that. And everyone's like, yup, Asia is her. We work through her. She is her. Needs a shoe deal on the immediate. And that's what we do. Like everyone's on board, speaking points on lock. No one goes left, no one goes right. It's all straight down the middle.
Do not.
So again, if we literally look at how we study leadership and study the formation of teams, the New York Liberty, I don't know if they're in the forming stage, because what comes after forming is performing, to where you go, you literally perform whatever the role is of the team, you do it, and it's almost automatic. Even when there are problems, when there are things to be fixed, IT department, you do this. Finance, HR, everyone's got their role. And I wonder if that's the part of the Easy Bake New York Liberty that's just gonna have to really ramp up in the finals. And that's a lot to ask a team to do, Misha. in the finals. And we heard today from two players who are in the finals for the first time. And one of them, Betnijah Laney, has been that core for the New York Liberty.
Yeah, and it's so wild. First of all, I loved that entire example. You just took me to school for a second. I love school. Stay in school, kids. No. Yeah, because I think it's absolutely correct. I wonder, from what we've seen from the Liberty, the ebbs and flows of it this season, it feels like they're still kind of on that roller coaster. They hadn't quite evened it out just yet coming into the playoffs. And we saw that, the way they kind of had to trudge through the series to get here. And I also think to add another layer to it, it's not just about the team finding its cohesion. It's also about the individual players finding their strides as well. And I think what we're also seeing is the Vegas Aces, it also plays into your entire example here. The Aces have had the time, like you said, to build up an Asia Wilson, to build up a Jackie Young. We all talked about how she, improved her shot. She improved her efficiency. She improved her entire offensive skill set. We knew what she could do on defense, but now she's like the ultimate two-way player. Same thing with KP. Same thing with even Kia, I would say. She's found her way into her role. They're all, to me, individually peaking. Again, almost, because last year they peaked and won a championship, of course, but it seems like they've got the same formula going individually as well. And so it just, they're a well-oiled machine at this point. And like you said, the Liberty, if they're going to give themselves a fighting chance, which they do have, because again, even if they haven't hit the forming stage, they're still a pretty damn good team. If they can put it together the way they need to put it together, it's just a matter of how do you do that in such short time,
And that's where I'm going to use the word ego. And I hope that those who listen to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, can understand the word in earnest, as opposed to kind of how we sometimes use it culturally or in society. But I do think ego, which can be extremely, very good. Ego, very different when it comes to the Aces and the New York Liberty. And I think contrary to how I think some of the individual New York Liberty players are perceived, my take, Brian, is that the individual ego, does not disrupt service to the greater goal, which might be the superpower for a young team who has not fully been through Tuckman's model to go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with a team that does have ego. And again, that's not a bad thing, but that is a swagged out team. Okay. We talking, they swaggy. Did you know? See, I keep going on my tangents.
Put their swag on.
Yo, did you see Jackie Young? I wish I had I almost always have a pair of glasses. Sis came in with the glasses and just
giving us
after she dropped 26 in game 1 by herself, right? There was nobody else on the dais with her. Like, the swag is just insane. The New York Liberty individually have that. And I get the sense that, again, going through the storming phase, it's very rarely about, and again, Monica used like, I'm gonna get my shot. I almost kind of wish there was a little more ego and a little more swag, and that's someone, it has to be JJ, Betnijah, or Stewie. We know Stewie can do that. You already said that, Brian. But sometimes I really do think, and this is something else they mentioned on WNBA Spaces, that like Jonquel Jones and Betnijah Laney, because I think they do it in two different ways. Sometimes they just need to be like, I'm gonna need y'all to move. Watch me work.
Yeah, something I think Vandersloot might have mentioned it in her post game too, is that the team is going to try to get Laney a few more touches. I think that was a point that she mentioned. I believe Sandy might have as well too, from what I remember in her post. So, because I think that especially Lainey in particular is really always able to sort of punish those mismatches. I asked her about it today in media availability about her success after halftime. She went 4 for 5, had some buckets in the painted area. So I think just her ability to really sort of like score on all three levels just sort of gives another pressure point for a defense to worry about.
Yeah.
And with that, you have someone who is a great decision maker, always knows how to make the right play, and it'll create more opportunities for everyone else. But I guess for the Liberty, the best way I think of it is like it's almost like a competitive mountain climber. Like you'll climb one mountain, Washington, another mountain, Connecticut, and now you have the highest mountain imaginable in Las Vegas. So the lessons you learn the first time around and the second time around, it's like you can bring them with you, but the difficulty is ratcheted up in a way that's so unique. It's almost like you have to like almost relearn on the fly in a sense. And I think that for the group, they've been really able to adjust quickly. Like we've seen them sort of like snap into a strategy out of nowhere and have it work for an extended period of time. So I think that's going to be something they try to do. Sandy was talking about how, as a team, for Vandersloot in particular, to make it easy for her, like they can set better screens, set them at different angles, create those new avenues to really make it to that way. If Vegas is really trying to like bake in their strategy of playing off of her so they can crowd JJ and Stewie and really keep someone stuck to Sabrina so she can't break free and get open like that. I think that creates new avenues for them to really figure stuff out. And I think that even for a group that's new and is sort of like, I guess, new and still building on the fly as compared to a fully formed Death Star that the Aces are, I think that there's still opportunities for them to sort of like get it right. And I think that I feel like there was enough good in the first half to sort of see that so they can say, okay, hey, if Stokes is switching out on Ionescu, she has those driving lanes if she really wants to take it there. She didn't do it as much in game one, which I think might be a point of correction for game two, but those avenues are there. It's just a matter of really hitting on them, and they have to at all costs avoid getting into like a little scoring drought because they were up 8 at one point, and then it's like you look down, like sometimes like I look down on my phone to do nonsense during the game, and then I look up and it's like, wait, why is this tied? What the heck just happened? Like you have to avoid those moments at all costs because you take your foot off the gas for like a second, they've got you with a 10-2 run, and it's right back.
And that's exactly what, again, after the game, and this is up on our Patreon. We also have a link for the video if you want to watch it on YouTube for the Patreon posse. But that's exactly what Courtney Vandersloot said. She talked a lot about, we've mentioned screens. She talked a lot about, again, having to get herself more involved. But what she also said is that there is no panic. They're not panicky is the word that she used. And she kept reiterating, we're going to learn from this. And that's, again, where the ego, again, in its pure form of the word, is very different. And I think quite honestly fascinating between these two teams. And again, I think that's the superpower, Misha, of the New York Liberty. So if you're a coach, I'd love for you to put your coach's hat on again for us. You're the coach. You have a team that is very malleable in the New York Liberty. They are definitely a skilled team. Down one game, but have done that before and won 3 outright. What are some of the conversations that you want to have? What are you pulling from film? What buttons do you want to press to get this New York Liberty team ramped up and on fire, ready to go for game 2?
So first and foremost, I'm challenging Sabrina Ionescu. That's the first thing I'm doing. I don't know Sandy's relationship with Sabrina, and so challenge can mean different things in different ways for different people. But I'm making it extremely clear to her, yo, you gotta step up. Like you cannot have a game 1 like you just had, because again, moving and looking at 7 points. It's not enough. Looking at the previous playoff series against Connecticut, against Washington, Sabrina, on the nights when she was Sabrina, what happened? That's when, to me, that's some of the moments where the Liberty looked their best. And again, back to what Brian and I were just talking about, and what you're talking about with ego is about self-esteem, self-importance. She's not playing out like she's got to be the star. That's not what I'm saying when I'm saying challenge Sabrina Ionescu. But in those moments when the Liberty looked their best, Stewie was finding buckets. When she couldn't find buckets, Sabrina was flowing freely, using her IQ. IQ is, when I say IQ, I just mean if Stewie drives to the short corner and the aces bring two people, Sabrina can rotate or find an open spot on the perimeter. It's little subtle stuff. It's nothing too complex. If we're talking about making Stewie a priority, if the game is close and Stewie's a priority and they're locked in on her and Sabrina can find those little pockets, I think she needs to cut to the basket more often as well. I think you can't just settle for staying around the perimeter because they know you want to do that. And Jackie Young and KP have been yelled at enough by Becky Hammon to not leave her open around there. We've seen it right on TV. She's got to find. Words. Yeah. You said what now?
With curse words.
But we've seen Sabrina be successful in those previous series, cutting to the basket and finding crafty seams and lanes to get layups, to get floaters, to get that kind of offense going. And I didn't see enough of that from her in the last game. So I'm challenging her first and foremost. And then again, to talk about ego, I'm bigging up JJ because to me, she was the brightest spot. She was the brightest spot in game one. JJ did what she needed to do. Yes, she ended up in some foul trouble. And yes, that's something you want to, mitigate as much as possible. But all in all, I thought she played a pretty damn good game. I thought there were moments where she was banging in the post and making the aces look the same way she made the Sun look in the last game of that series. So I'm bigging her up. And frankly, again, just like we talked about, I'm getting organized. I'm saying, look, we're going to do our best to keep up pace, but if we can't find our primary offense, the goal is to go through Stewie. It's situational. I do agree, Brian, with what you said, your follow-up. I do think it has to be situational just because you do have so much scoring and so many options on the Liberty's team. But at some point when you're in a rut or you're in a scoring drought, like you just talked about, Erica, you have to say, okay, this is the moment. We're going to Stewie. Stewie's going to get to the free throw line. We're going to Stewie. They're going to bring a double and we're going to find somebody open and we're going to get this thing revved back up. But you have to be decisive and you cannot let those moments last too long.
Ooh, there's so much. This might have to be like a 2-3-parter in and of itself because there are so many things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about Jonquel Jones. I agree. If Marine Johannes doesn't go off for 14, which again, all of the bench points except for Thornton had 3, I think. Yeah. So almost all of the bench points came from Marine Johannes. I loved personally that Sandy Brondello went to her bench early. And we did not see her go to the bench necessarily early, and we did not see Marine Johannes at all in the last game against the Connecticut Sun. We've talked about that, how Marine Johannes needs to get involved. And even Sandy Brondello talked about before game 1 that would have been something that, looking back, that she realized, we need to get her more activated. And we have seen, as I mentioned, Kelsey Plum, like literally having a temper tantrum after one of her shots. And Becky Hammon being like, listen, when she is not playing against me, I am a fan. Okay. I love that. But it was 16 and 10, double once again for Jonquel Jones, 16 points, 10 rebounds. Now the 4 fouls I do want to talk about because I do think that we've talked about multiple times on this podcast, Brian, that Jonquel Jones, she gonna throw them bows. And sometimes those bows are thrown to make a statement. I'm gonna keep it funky. I'll be like, JJ, I don't know if you need to do all that. I think she curbed that. Even when there was frustration, I think she really anchored herself in her game, like what Misha was saying. And those 4 fouls, because when she got 2, then she got 3, I was like, oh, she got to come out. She got to come out. No, JJ was like, no, I'm not leaving this court, and she settled in. But how much does that? And we've talked about this before, right? How much would how the game is officiated? How would that impact players like Jonquel Jones? That's one thing that's on my mind. Another thing is, and we talked about this before we started recording, and listen, I'm going to keep it funky. And I was a little surprised that I did this, but there was someone behind me. Every time Breanna Stewart would miss, they were like, oh, that's your MVP. I'm on press row. I'm in the media section. Every time it was like, oh, that's your MVP. That's your MVP. Oh, look, she looking like trash. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, first of all, sir, I don't know if you know, but that's a regular season award. Thank you very much. So she could stank it up for the rest of the playoffs, and that wouldn't matter. But he just kept going, and I was like, at one point I turned around, I was like, yo, well, why are you a hater though? Like, it just was too much. It was too much. But you know what? Breanna Stewart quietly led the team in points.
And
hello, sir. And there's a difference between what we were talking about before we started recording in like a easy, fluid. I don't want to say easy. That's because that's not giving enough credit. There is a flow to 14 for Marine Johannes. There was a flow to 16 for Jonquel Jones. I would argue a little bit tougher, but still a flow. Definitely mega flow for Jackie and Plum Dog with 26. And then I think Stewie, and you could probably say the same about Asia, but definitely Stewie, that was a hard-earned 21 points. That was a hard-earned 19 points. And the fact that, like you said, 1 point away was Asia Wilson to getting 20 plus. And that just round number makes a difference when we talk about basketball. But I was going to talk about Stewie, but now I want to talk about both of them. Yeah. I'm going to you first, Brian. You talk about Stewie, and then Misha, maybe you offer up for Asia. When your stars, MVPs, right, have to work so hard to get 20 plus points, I feel like that's fitting into what we've talked about: pace, flow, screens, and who is going to have the ball in their hands. Brian, we've been talking a lot about what the Liberty need to do. And we also know that the Liberty sometimes will have Breanna Stewart run the one. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is a way that maybe the New York Liberty want to go to that a little bit more to see if that opens up things for other players and maybe even Stewie herself?
Yeah, I'm thinking that. But before I get to that point, to that media member, sir, cut it out. Boy,
cut it out.
Don't even think about it. Like, keep that over there, because I tell Erica all the time. I be chatting in press row. I'm talking to everybody in the press row. Boy, don't bring that in my press row, man. Keep it down there. But now to the real stuff.
Hey, WNBA fans, Erica L. Ayala here, and I am pleased to announce something very special. Given that a few members of the Gotta Get Up podcast are planning to cover the WNBA Finals, we thought this would be a great time to roll out Gotta Get Up Overtime. Now, this is going to be a special Patreon-only podcast. By joining up on our Patreon page as part of Black Rosie Media, you will get a direct link to our audio podcast. This will be in addition to our free podcast. It will include things like exclusive interviews with players, especially when we're at games. It's going to include some of our behind the scenes stuff when we're covering the WNBA Finals, when we're at games. It will have some of our player interviews that maybe just don't make the podcast or that we're not using in articles elsewhere. So this is a great time to sign up for Gotta Get Up Overtime. And also, if you don't want to subscribe to our Patreon, which we highly recommend, we also going to have a newsletter coming in the off season, then we would love if you would consider making a little tip to Gotta Get Up. If you've been finding our content useful, we again we're expected to have two of our regular participants, Brian and Erica, that would be me, traveling for the WNBA Finals. And right now this is a labor of love, and we're looking to get ways to monetize the show and to expand our WNBA coverage. So if you're available, we have, again, the Patreon option, Gotta Get Up Overtime, and it's going to be an overdrive for the WNBA Finals. But you can also make a little tip, air quote tip. Just donate anything that you can using Venmo or PayPal, and we would greatly appreciate it. But we are so excited to have some of our crew between myself, Misha, and Brian. We do have another episode. It's going to be in 2 parts coming to you soon. And then I will be in Vegas for game 1, and we'll keep up with you on Gotta Get Up overtime, and of course on Black Rosie social media for everything else. But thank you so much for listening or watching on YouTube, and we hope that for those who are able, that you support us beyond what you're doing right now. Thanks so much.
I think that I feel like you'll be, hey man, like keep it, do your job the right way. I doubt,
Brian. I hope he shows up. I hope he pull up at game 3. I'm gonna be like, yup, that him, there you go.
Man, I hope he does. But to the Stewie point, I think that having her bring up the ball is a really great sort of inversion that Sandy does sometimes. I'm gonna steal Misha's bit and make it about the Mystics, but that's what they did to win against Washington in game 2. Since Cloud was all on Sabrina, they had Stewie bring the ball up, and they ran a lot of inverted pick and rolls to get her those easy opportunities, get her those shots downhill. So I think that it's something that they can utilize, and I think that it would sort of like it would create static for Vegas in that way to create a different sort of look. And I think also get more people moving off of her. So I think that's one big opportunity. And one thing especially that I think works well for any sort of big with the uniqueness that Stewie has is that when you're able to get her on the move, that's what really opens things up for her, because you're having Asia having like you're almost, as you're moving Stewie, you're moving Asia at the same time. So you're making it a situation where she's having to move more. And that opens things up for other people that are not in Asia's path. So I feel like that could be an inversion and thing that Sandy tries to utilize a little bit more too. And I think that especially as they're able to sort of like navigate the way that they're doubling off of Vandersloot or are really trying to sort of like crowd Stewart in that way, I think that that's going to open some things up for her. There was one play in particular where I think they had trapped Marine. I think Stewie caught it in the mid post, and then there was like 3 people on her, and then she rose up. I think that was one of, I think Asia wound up blocking the shot on that possession, but there was like a tight window. There was like a small window where Sabrina was open to her left, and I think that if she's in more situations like that throughout game 2, she can use her vision, and the players sort of getting to the natural spots. So it's next time if it's, if Jackie's coming off of Sabrina and she's right there, like one pass away, boom, it goes up as 3 right there. So I think that I feel like I'm sort of bouncing all over the place in a sense, but I would say that in a series, it's great to sort of see the same team over and over and over and over and over, because you know that those beats are coming again. So if I'm in the mid post and help is coming from my weak side, okay, I know Marina's right there, Sabrina's right there, got it. I can adjust and adapt accordingly. So I think that for a player who's seen Vegas as much as Brianna has over the past 2 years in really high stakes basketball, seeing them and knowing them the way that you do, and same for JJ at the same point, knowing them the way that you do, you sort of like have a feel for how they operate when they're operating at peak efficiency. So I think that sort of experience will sort of come back to the group for the folks who may not have seen Vegas in championship level basketball. You know them in a way that everyone else may not. So you're able to sort of like rely on that and build it for everybody else.
And see, I'm literally having a conversation with myself as we're talking through this, because I keep going back and forth on if I think the New York Liberty can win with their like, we're all in this together, or if they need to buckle down. And I love the point that you made, Brian, because it's, again, something that Courtney Vandersloot has said. There are multiple people on that team that have won a title, some within the last 3 seasons, right? And we can go further than that. And Stewie she got what, like 2, 3? I don't even know. If we go all the way back to like the bubble, but there's a difference between learning and doing that together. So that's what Courtney Vandersloot has said. But I love what you said about knowing the opponent, because again, and JJ was already on my list, Stewie on my list, these 2 know what Vegas is going to look like, their tendencies in finals basketball. I had a question for you all. I wrote it down, Misha, but Brian said something and I saw you light up. And I'm a call an audible. I don't like that game, but they have some phrases that make sense. I'm a call an audible. We're going to come to you to talk about the chess match, or what K Plum said. This is a war. The longevity of playing the same team multiple times for a title. What stands out to you right now with where the series is after game 1?
Gosh, this was something that I was so excited about this series for, because again, we've talked about Becky Hammon and Sandy Brondello and them individually being successful as players, successful as coaches. But I just want to say again, we're so privileged. We're so privileged to have the opportunity to watch these folks work, to watch them cook, to watch them break out the plays, the X's and O's. But what stands out to me is that as we're talking so much about the Liberty's adjustments. Yes, they lost the game, but to me, it's more than that. It's not just because they lost the game. It's because we know what we're getting out of Vegas. We know what we're going to get from A'ja Wilson. We know what we're going to get from Chelsea Gray. We know what we're going to get from them top to bottom. And what I mean by that is New York can use that to their advantage. There are small adjustments that Becky Hammon can make, but at the end of the day, because we know they're going to go through A, as Jackie Young said. If you find a way to disrupt A'ja Wilson's flow, disrupt her space, not make her feel comfortable when she gets that ball to the high post, the elbow extended the way that the aces like to get it to her, then you're on to something. You might be cooking with grease. The matter of fact is you just haven't found that yet, because A'ja Wilson is, world-class player. She had a hard 19 points, but she found her 19 points. You know what I mean? And so at this point, it's just a matter of Sandy continuing to tinker on the defensive end of ways to make her uncomfortable. I think it was Nikias Duncan I saw not too long ago talking about the way that they've gotten A'ja Wilson and Kelsey Plum in more actions to get Benijah Laney out of the way so that she's not a help defender, because as we know, Benijah Laney, excellent two-way player, but she's got that hybrid size that makes it possible for her to be a good switch and help on A'ja Wilson in situations where the Liberty need it. And so that's an adjustment that Becky Hammon made. So the ball's now in Sandy Brondello's court. Like, what way do you want to go with it? That's up to you, but they have to find a way to disrupt her. And I think we're going to see in game 2 a concerted effort to do that. But again, as Brian mentioned earlier, sometimes you got to figure out, okay, there's certain stuff that we just know is going to happen. There are certain players that we know is going to step up. What are we willing to give up and what are we willing to take away? And so I'm just interested to see who Sandy Brondello keys in on, who she tries to take away. We know it's not going to be Kia. Miss Kia had 0 points and was still, that's so nuts to me. Like, can we, for a second, she had no points, but she was, she did what she needed to do. And it's not like she was not of value to the team. So folks, if you can find a way to be of value to a team as a starter without scoring any points, just watch Kia Stokes. I don't know. If you're not an offense head, watch Kia Stokes, because goodness gracious. But anyway, yeah, that's
but I love that. Because another thing that they mentioned on the WNBA Twitter Spaces is where does Kayla Thornton fit into this? You talked about hybrid size with Benijah Laney and being a two-way player. I think Thornton gives you size and some, right? Mm-hmm. She give you some muscle. She give you a little more muscle.
And some extra fouls, man.
Listen, and that defense, unlocking that defense. I thought it was interesting that we got Benijah Laney and Kayla Thornton at media today at the day that we were recording, because Stewie at the 1 and then some way to get Kayla Thornton more involved. Kayla Thornton has been so important to this team early on, and I think has gotten a little bit lost in the sauce as JJ's found her space, as Benijah Laney has been more integral to the offense. Even Maureen Johannes finding, her stroke and getting minutes. Also, listen, I'm going to say this, and I say it with that New York love. Fam, I don't know how many listen to the podcast. I know y'all feel that Maureen Johannes can be a starter on another team. Just listen to the podcast, fam. Just listen. Maureen is good. Thank you, Christy Tolliver, for putting. MJ is good.
Shout out
MJ is good. She's good. Don't worry about Don't worry about Indiana.
Don't worry about me, sweetheart.
Don't worry about me, sweetheart. Listen, but you're gonna start Maureen Johannes over Jordan Canada, Chelsea Mitchell. Who is she starting for? Who? You tell me. I want names. Just like all y'all with the voters, you wanted to know who put Asia Wilson forth. I want names. Who's she starting for? On what team? Where?
What are the
In
trade
what
options?
year?
Lay it out for us. And you gonna tear her away from Steph Dolson? Please.
We're not doing that. I love MJ. It's documented. Love her. But let's not be hyperbolic. Sis ain't ready to do all that just yet. Not yet. It's coming. But she's not there yet. Not for the WNBA. She got who? Where? Jewel? She coming for Jewel? No, I didn't think so. Y'all need to stop. See, now I done forgot what I was saying because people making me mad with that. I just got so mad. I'm like, y'all need to stop
for a second.
She's not starting nowhere else. Y'all need to stop that. Okay, I remember what I was gonna say. Misha, as you were talking, 20 minutes later, as you were talking, it reminded me of a show. I know Brian and I did the show. I don't think you were on the show, but we were talking about advantage of upside. And Sandy Brondello had a quote. It was an ESPN game, ESPN or ABC game. And Rebecca Lobo was sharing a quote where she was like, listen, just like you said, Misha, you basically know what you're going to get with Vegas. We've talked about it, that the depth of the Vegas bench different than the depth of the New York Liberty bench. So, and it goes back to, again, this easy bake New York Liberty team. How nimble can they be? How much upside? Because I do think they are the team with upside. Tarika Foster Brasby and I did something for CBS, and she said, listen, the Liberty already had an amazing season. You can't, and you know if Tarika's saying it.
It's really real.
Real. Because she's been hating on us, and you know, of course, I teased her about that. But if Tarika Foster Brasby can acknowledge that the New York Liberty have had a successful season, I think we all can do that. Jokes aside, it's all love. It's all love, Tarika. The advantage of upside is something that we have talked about before, Brian. And again, I just keep going back and forth. Like, do they have enough? Don't they have enough? Does this matter? Does it not matter? Is their hybrid enough? Or is the more traditional way of building a team and the ace is going to win out? But when you think about that advantage of upside and you think about first team to 3 games to 3 wins, it has got this. What makes you confident that the New York Liberty can get it done, Brian? And what is one thing you really want them to work on if they're going to get it done?
I think what makes it confident that they can sort of figure it out and get to those 3 wins is that there are so many more buttons they can push. I forget who mentioned it, but I saw someone mention that, I guess on Twitter, that you can play Thornton a little bit more if you're looking for that extra size and defense. Like you can hit that. I guess in one of the Vegas games earlier, the 3-guard lineup of Sloot, Sab, and Marine did work. So you can go back to that. There are so many different sort of combinations you can push and press to really get things to work the way you need it to. So I think that for the Liberty, that upside piece is there. And the room for like peak and getting to their peak and exploring as they get there is a present and unique factor that Vegas may not be able to prepare for in a sense. Because I think with Vegas, we know their peak 5, their best 5 is when they swap out Stokes for AC. Like we know that's coming and we know that we got to be ready for it. But I think with New York, we've seen games that KT has closed out. Like where she's been in the last 5 to close at the game. Like we've seen where Marina's been in the last 5 to close at the game. So New York has a bunch of different combinations of buttons they can try out to really get it to work in that way. So I think that can go for them. And I guess one thing I'm really looking forward to watching in the game too is the rebounding battle. I know we called it out specifically that I think Misha said if Vegas was within 5, at least 5, they would win. And Vegas actually out rebounded them by like 5. So it was right on the money. So I think if the Liberty are able to own the glass the way they can, if the Liberty are able to own the glass the way that we've seen them do against Vegas, I think they're going to be in great position. One thing as you guys were talking about earlier that I was thinking about with JJ in particular, there was one possession where she got like 3 straight offensive rebounds and they didn't wind up scoring. It's one of those plays where we know that JJ can body with anybody in the league. Like, you find a big player, JJ's going through them. She getting that position. She getting them boards. And if she's not finishing at the cup, she's getting it at somebody for a great look. And I think if the Liberty get a second bite at the apple in that same situation, I think they'll be able to cash in this time. But I think just JJ's presence on the inside is such a burden for teams to deal with. I think that the more that she's able to play, because she did leave the game for a little bit for an ankle thing, but she's fine. So nothing to worry about on that front. But having her on the court for an extended period without having a drop off with her absence, even though the Liberty helps her without her, but just having that force on the inside is even if she's not scoring is such a difficult thing to deal with. So having her on the court from beginning to end is going to be so valuable in that way, because you're always going to have to put 2 on her to sort of make sure she doesn't wear you out on the glass. And then with that, gives more opportunities to people on the perimeter, gives other players opportunities to make things happen. Because we know, fouls or not, JJ's on 10. Like, she's going to be on 10 every time out. And
she's ready.
Yeah, yep. She's going to make people feel her. Like, JJ going to make a,
JJ's ready. JJ's ready. And I know we talked about this before we started recording. I don't want to get into it too much. I want to see how the series is going to play out. But Courtney Vandersloot, again, if you check out our Patreon extras, she talked about that she felt that game 1 was called drastically differently than the entire semifinal series. And that there were some things that the New York Liberty had to adjust to, and that they didn't, right? It took them a little bit of time, but now they got all that in the bag and they're ready to go. I was looking because you said something about, and I remember exactly the play. I'm pretty sure, go back to Black Rosie Media, because I tweeted, I was like, no, we did not grab 5 O boards and get 0 points. Like, I'm just trying to understand. Like, and that goes back to efficiency. So second, and I wanted to look it up because I remember, I believe I wrote about this for CBS, but I don't even know. There was a lot going on. But second chance points, the Liberty have 4 second chance points. That seems low to me. The Aces only had 6. So I guess, in striking distance. Here's the difference though. The Aces 6 points on 3 of 4 chances. Right? Executing 3 of 4 chances. So there really weren't a lot of second chance opportunities. The Liberty had 6 chances and executed twice. That's got to change. Yeah. That's got to change, because that one sequence, I remember it happened right in front of us on press row. And I was like, this, y'all got to clean this up. And even, I know a lot of people have been talking about Brianna Stewart had some open looks, could knock them down. It's hard for me to knock players that are at like just an elite level when it comes to damn near everything, when it comes to efficiency, because like, and we want them to be perfect, Y'all tripping. Did she get 40 points or not? Like, just like, let it rock. Because if somebody hadn't played defense, it would have been 80. Like, what y'all want? Y'all want everything. Dang. Not that I have a thought about it. I'm fine. But Misha, I want to come to you. Same question that I asked Brian, but let's go to the Aces. They obviously have game 1. Kelsey Plum made it very clear that there is no room in her mind to expect that what was available to her in game 1 will be available to her in game 2. She said that very explicitly. She talked about, that's the quote that I used earlier, like, this is a war. That came from dog. She's like, this is a war. Okay, so given we talked a lot, obviously, because we are Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Black Rosie Media. We've obviously been talking about the Liberty a little bit more, but we're always going to talk about the opponent. Let's talk about what gives you confidence in what we've seen from Vegas to be able to be the first back-to-back champion since Lisa Leslie and the Sparks. And what is one thing that they absolutely have to master if they want to do it?
So something that gives me confidence is let's just run down the list here, right? Vegas has the championship experience as a collective, as a unit. A. B. And some will think this matters and some will think it won't. I happen to think it matters because I'm Leo Gang and Asia Wilson happens to be Leo Gang. And I know how it is when you feel slighted. All right. That fire that burns within you, that's why we're seeing Asia Wilson play the way we're seeing her play in these playoffs, because she's on a mission to not prove it to everybody else, but to prove it to herself and to prove it to her team that she is that girl. So she's got the power of the revenge factor, is something I like to call it. Okay. They got home court, which in itself is a big factor, and they're up a game, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of variables on their side. And even aside from gameplay, you know, if I was a betting person, I don't like losing money, so I'm not a betting person. But if I was a betting person, I would probably put money on the Aces for the series. I don't know about game 2, but for the series. All right. So that's what makes me feel confident just in and of itself. What makes me feel a little bit uneasy, stamina. Stamina to me, it reared its head in a good way for the Aces in game 1. But the longer the New York Liberty can push this series, the better their chances are. Because what did we see? It was about the 3/4 mark of the season. Teams started talking about, wow, all this flying back and forth. The flights had a lot to do with it too, but the volume of games that we saw this season was more than any season that we've ever seen. And right now in these playoffs, their legs are a little bit more dead than they've ever been. You know what I mean? By this time in the season. And yes, we have a little extra time between games, which as viewers and folks who are watching and waiting for these games to come, it feels like, all right. But you know, how much of that time,
we're like, we're ready to go.
Yeah, and they feel ready to go. But even that aside, you're going 5 games. If the New York Liberty are lucky, they can go 5 games and stretch this thing out. That to me is a sign of the New York Liberty being in the driver's seat and being at an advantage. Because I truly think with their depth, not only would 5 games give them, you know, more of an opportunity to show their depth and how much condition the Aces are in, it would also give them an opportunity to make more and more adjustments. And like Brian said, they have more buttons left to press than the Las Vegas Aces have left to press. So how many more adjustments can Becky Hammond make with the same 6 players going in the rotation? You know what I'm saying? So it's really a toss-up. But game 2 is going to be pivotal.
Oh man, so we kind of did our little remix. We did a little differently of kind of like our predictions. So we're just going to do hard predictions. I don't usually like to do these, but I feel like it's a good way to end a podcast. So Brian, we'll go to you. Who takes game 2? Who do you think is the leading scorer from either team? Who do you think overall will be the leading scorer?
Game 2, I'll give to the Liberty. I'll say leading scorer for the game. I'll pick JJ for leading scorer for game 2.
Misha, same question.
You're not gonna like it. I've got the Aces and I've got Asia Wilson leading all scorers. I think this is an opportunity for the Aces to show the dominance, right? To really flex the muscle here, because again, like I just mentioned, those 4 variables, that's a lot. That's a lot of momentum for a team. And I just think that Asia Wilson, she had it hard in game 1, but they're gonna adjust. They're gonna find ways to get her the ball. And it's gonna be tough. I see this one going down to the wire a little bit more. I see this one being tight and a little bit more low scoring, but I think it's gonna be Asia.
Ooh, I like both of these picks, to be honest. I'm good with either one. I have gone on the record saying that New York has to win one of these games on the road early on. So I'm going to take New York Liberty. This is probably more of an aspirational pick because, as I've talked about so many times on this podcast, them keys got dropped off to Asia. The keys eventually, I will say this till I'm purple in the face. Those keys for the New York Liberty will go to Sabrina Ionescu. It's going to happen. That being said, if it's going to happen, it needs to start now. And that's what, Misha, you were talking about when it was like that's who I'm having a conversation with if I'm Sandy Brondello. Now, I come with a certain kind of energy. Sandy is really good at, being able to double dutch between like come in, and some players need you to come at them. Real short, real simple, real clear. We're not asking about feelings. What were your thoughts? How were you thinking? We're not doing that. Right. Did you do your job? Nah. Can you do your job or nah? Let me know. Because if you can't do it, I just want to know. It's fine, but I'm going to need you to let me know. I think that Sabrina has to really damn near get 30 points. If they're going to win, which is my prediction, she really needs to push the needle and get like 30. And we've seen her do it. The aces are obviously going to make things difficult.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Jonathan Kolb built this for you. He built it for you. Put it on a platter to the point where even Kia Stokes talked about it before game 1. And it was Jonathan's vision. And to see him execute it, she's given kudos to the team that she doesn't play for anymore and is about to drop 0 points on in game 1 of the WNBA Finals.
Drop 0. Oh my God.
What we doing, fam? Like, I'm gonna need keys to be dropped. I'm gonna need the keys to be delivered. So yeah, I'm gonna pick Sabrina until it comes true. That's what I have to say. That's what I have to say.
Wow. But
so Sabrina, come with it. I'll steal your damn sneakers if you need to. Because that's how I roll.
If you need a little extra motivation, we can send somebody around that way.
I mean, I know a guy.
I know a guy who knows a guy.
But listen, you in New York, sis, you got to let us know what you need because we got you. Take them shoes, got you. New insoles, know a guy. Bacon, egg, and cheese, delivered. You got to let us know because we here, but we're going to need you to handle that. We going to handle this. You handle that. It's time. It's time. I don't know how else to say it. I'm going to cut all that out and just be like, it's time. It's time. When Sab's ready to go, that's it. That's it. And she knows. She be knowing. She's like, visualizing and like all that stuff. She gonna know. So we sending the good vibes, good energy, because it's time, sis. It's time. Universe, it's time. Sabrina Ionescu got to drop like 1 million. That's it. I won't for less. I won't settle for less. Period. She's gonna win the whole series in 1 game. That's it. That's what I want.
She does. She does.
But is it too much? Like, is that too much? I feel like it's not.
But that's honestly, and not to turn this into a whole nother talking point, but just that's an extremely important point. You know what I mean? Who does Sabrina Ionescu see herself being? Who is she prepared to be at this moment? That's a real conversation that needs to be had. That's part of why I said Sandy Brondello needs to challenge her. Because if she's not ready to step into that moment, that's a come to Jesus moment you have to have in order for, everybody else to be able to move forward, for the team to move forward. Because like you were talking about earlier, ego is not part of this equation, I don't feel like in a negative way, at least. There's not a situation where anybody feels more important than anybody else. And if Sabrina needs to have that conversation, I will hope that she would have the self-awareness to be able to have that conversation. But if she's going to do it, do it.
That's it. Because, them storylines would go quiet real quick. They would go quiet real quick. And I do know Sabrina be reading things. She told us that. She reads things. She be seeing it. So when she's ready to posterize, y'all,
the stage is set beautifully. Like, it really is. It really is.
In the perfect world, if the Liberty win the championship, I'm gonna ask Brian, the PR guy, to just pass me her phone for 1 hour uninterrupted. If people hate her, let me handle her account. I'll make you really mad.
Brian is ready.
Coming
Brian is ready. You see how we do? Like we went full New York on this podcast. This was wild. But I love it. That's why I love this. But we gonna wrap this up for real. All right. I think we have done all we can do on this podcast.
I'm trying so hard not to holler into this mic. It's so close to my mouth, and I do not want to blast nobody. Eardrums out. You're killing me. Tonight.
Yeah, they should be used to that right now. Y'all gotta know by now to adjust your volumage because we be acting a mess.
My cheeks hurt, dog.
Oh my gosh. That's the sign of a good podcast, I think. Well, Misha Jones, Brian Florentin, and Erica Ayala, that's me. We have brought you a little bit of a recap of game one, and I think we laid out pretty compelling cases for what needs to happen in game two. This has been another episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Black Rosie Media. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. And again, we have a Patreon page, and there is a specific tier if you want more about the New York Liberty and the WNBA. Until next episode, enjoy game two, and peace out, everybody.